in construction, which of course is technical proposal reading, understanding, awarding contracts, post-contract administration. I am not a writer. I'm going to tell you that first and foremost. I am not a writer. I've never actually written, well, I can't say that. I have written a technical proposal, but I'm a reader. And I can tell you after the thousands of proposals that I've read and evaluated and scored, I can tell you what we're looking for or what the government is looking for. So that's why when I retired, I volunteered and came to PTAC and said, there's just so much information to give to people that might help them, because sometimes it's just simple mistakes that trip you up. So I'm a volunteer at PTAC, and I'm going to be your instructor today or leader here. And we're going to try to get through, what I would love to do in about 12 hours worth of training. We're going to try to cut it down to about 6. So we're going to try to get through it rather quickly. I'm going to give everybody else a quick opportunity to just introduce themselves. And so Kathy can talk about PTAC if she wants to. Kathy?
Hi, good morning. I'm Kathy Kokas. I am the coordinator for this sub-center of Washington PTAC, one of 8 in the state. You're going to meet one of my colleagues momentarily at another center. And in addition to PTAC, Kitsap Economic Development Alliance, which is the host for this center, assists small businesses in Kitsap County. But the PTAC side helps people throughout the state. So we're happy to have you here. Let's see, Lisa, you want to go next?
You bet. Thanks, Kathy and Mona and Mary Jo and Terry. All of you are from the Kitsap area, and I represent up north, Snohomish, Skagit, Whatcom Island, and San Juan. I am a PTAC counselor, also a small business liaison for Economic Alliance, Snohomish County. And the work that we do is very similar to what you're going to see today. Mona is our subject matter expert for proposal writing, and all of our centers dabble in giving this information out, but the reason I'm on today is to learn from Mona. So I've been, and truly it's the first time I've seen this presentation, so I'm gonna take diligent notes. In our center, we have a proposal class or workshop that is interactive, and it's the first time we did it was a month ago, and I'm trying to bring in subject matter experts to show how to dissect a proposal. So that's what my focus is. Now I'm going to see what Mona has to share and be able to pass that on to people as well. So I'm PTAC. Enjoy this.
Thanks. Mary Jo?
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Mary Jo, and I'm with the Kitsap PTAC. I'm also a former contracting officer, and then right before I retired for the last 6 or 7 years, I was a deputy for small business, which is really what I loved, helping the small businesses to get contracts and be successful at them. And I work with Kathy and Terry and Mona right here.
And Terry.
Hi, I'm Terry Homburg. I retired last year, 29 years Navy contracting experience in construction, service contracts, and architect engineering. And I joined PTAC the day after I retired to pass on information that I've learned 29 years on the other side of the table and help you get government contracts. Thank you.
Okay, Mona, it's your show.
Okay. One of the things that, one of the main goals here is we break this into kind of 3 sessions. I think the last one is bringing everything together, but what I do like to do is spend a little bit of time talking about how to read and understand federal contracts. You can't write a technical proposal if you don't even understand the contract, where to find it, what you're looking for, because literally the government has a checklist, and when they are reviewing your proposal, they're going down the checklist. They have very specific requirements. You're going to hear me say this several times, but the government sees so many proposals and they read so many of these documents, and sometimes it's repetitive. Sometimes people say the same things over and over. We're going to talk about that. But it gets to be the point where contracting officers will look and say, if you can't understand my instructions, I don't understand how you can do a contract for me. So I'm going to take the time to go through how to read and understand a federal contract first. We're going to spend a little bit of time on that, and then we'll start diving into how to transfer that into how to write a technical proposal. So I hope you bear with me. I'm not quite sure how this works. Usually we're in a room where I can see people's hands or nodding or confusion on your face. So if you need something, I guess you raise your hand or holler at Kathy, or she'll take your questions down, and feel free to ask them. This is your class. This is not my class. I mean, I'm offering you this information, but I already know all this. And so I'm sharing this with you. And if there's something that's confusing, please let us know and one of us can help you.
So you can either raise your hand using, you know, the Zoom, or you can write your question in the chat.
Perfect. And then Kathy will let me know what's going on. We have to end at 10:30 today, and then we will pick it back up on Friday. Friday is always the last session is always my funnest one, because we get to dive into some common mistakes and things that people do, and some tricks and things we can do. So bear with me as we get through this part. First of all, we want to talk about what are the types of solicitations, what's the uniform contract format, forms, you know, what are the parts of the solicitation, some tricks that we might offer you on how to understand the numbering system and what you're reading, you know, some basic things like what's the difference between a clause and a provision and when do they apply, you know, what are my reps and certs, what's the order of precedence, you know, where is the information that I'm looking for that before I can even start a proposal. If I can tell you over and over and again, and Mary Jo, Terry, and I are all former contracting officers, we can tell the minute we open your proposal if you have not read the contract. I mean, it's just that evident. So that's why we stress this, we go over it. We can also tell if you've, how much effort you've put into it, like cutting and pasting from your last solicitation. Or if you simply reiterate what we call, you know, mirror back to us. If we tell you we need you to explain something and you just give us back those exact words, we've read these over and over and over. And so that's why we're here trying to tell you, pay attention to these little tricks and trades, but understand the minute we open your proposal, we can tell if you've even read the contract and know what you're talking about. And some of that is so important because, as I say in other classes, your whole goal in anything you present, whether it be your capability statement, an introduction, your technical proposal, is you're trying to express to the reader, your client, that you need to lower their risk. You need to be able to communicate that you can do this, you understand this, and you're there for them in the sense that they don't need to hold your hand. So we're looking for things in your proposal that explain how you understand the work and are going to accomplish the work, instead of just the fact that you can tell us you're going to do it. So we're going to talk about some of that today, and hopefully that I will get through. Different types of solicitation packages. This is kind of, I guess we want to kind of start out with the fact that there's a difference between an invitation for bid, which is just, you know, you give me your bid, mostly in products and when you're buying, when you're selling certain commercial items, off the shelf type of things. In an IFB, they've also referred to it as a sealed bid. But in this fact, if it's an IFB, it's a request for bid, it's just a price, you know, so technically if you're submitting an IFB, you're not going to be using any of this information for a technical proposal, because you're going to give them a bid, you're going to turn it in, it's either accepted or not accepted. A request for proposal is called an RFP. You'll use that term. Government loves their acronyms. So these are terms that you're going to start getting to be very familiar with. An RFP, we refer to that all the time, is a request for proposal. And that is exactly what it means. It's a technical proposal as well as a price proposal. And you're going to explain how you're going to accomplish the job, or what you're going to do for that services. Oftentimes it's used for what we call best value trade-off. Sometimes, and as you're reading the contract, you're going to figure out whether it's low price technically acceptable, meaning your technical proposal's fine, then it's all about price. Mm-hmm. Whether or not there's going to be trade-offs, meaning, you know, if you're giving us a better product and maybe a little higher price, that the government can consider that. So a request for proposal is exactly that. It is going to be a proposal. Request for quotations. is an offer. Again, you're talking mostly about supplies, goods, and services, less than $25,000, but can be higher. I don't know. Matter of fact, I haven't even updated this recently with all the changes in the thresholds. But a request for quotation is, again, it is a price that's quoted. That's an offer. This happens a lot in supplies where the government will ask for quotes and they may or may not ever award it to you, or maybe multiple ones. So we're going to focus on the RFPs. That's what you're specifically looking for. If you're getting into an IFB or an RFQ, remember, you're just providing a quote. You don't need a technical proposal, okay? I want to talk about probably, and I swear to you, this is not in cast and concrete. Oh, let me clarify that. It is cast and concrete, but the odds of everybody following this are very, very confusing. We got a lot of new people. The sections might be in the contracts, but we're going to try to explain to you how you need to research things and look for things because some people put them in the wrong sections. This is a uniform contract format. It is set out in the FAR as how your contract or your proposal, or I'm sorry, your RFPs will be issued, where the information is, what format, what section, where you can expect to find things. And we're going to go through each section so you quickly understand what it is you're looking for, where it should be, when it applies, what do I need to do to read it now, what conditions, where is there pricing information, things that I might need to consider for my pricing. And just because, I'm sorry, hold on just a sec. I have to cough, get a drink. And again, just because it's supposed to look like this doesn't mean that it always does. I've often been surprised that I'll open up an obscure contract from, say, the Forestry Service, and none of these numbers line up, and you have to start reading or looking for things. And hopefully when we're done today, you'll be able to understand what goes in each section, at least where to start looking for it if it's not, okay? Very seldom does the government give you enough time to read the contract cover to cover, nor would it be interesting enough to read cover to cover. But you should be able to at least be able to distinguish where this information is or what you're looking for and be able to try to find it, okay? Very quickly, if you're, the distinction between construction contract format and a uniform contract format is numbering versus alpha. And I can explain very quickly that if you open up a contract and the sections are numerical, you're looking at a construction contract. Same type of requirements, just different format. If you open up an RFP and it has alpha designators and sections, you're looking at a uniform contract format, which is probably, should be for services or supplies. Construction follows this format, and there's also a distinction between design build and design bid build. A little bit difference in the numbering system, but pretty much follows these formats. And at the end, I think Kathy's going to make sure that you have a copy of this training packet. So a lot of these forms are just provided for you to reference and to use at your convenience.
Yes, I will.
Yeah, this slide gives you a kind of a distinction of, you'll see the same requirements are there, but if you're looking at two different contract formats, this is the numbering system. So, you know, where your solicitation contract form is in section A on a supplies and services, it's going to be in section 00 for a construction contract. Down below there, you'll see that K, L, and M are, I've highlighted those, is that when you're getting ready to bid on this, this is where you're going to find your information to submit your bid. This is how it's going to be evaluated. These sections fall off after award because they don't apply after award. So anytime you open up a brand new RFP and you're looking for the information, most people just jump to K, L, and M to figure out what they have to submit. And we're going to go through those in some detail. On a construction contract, that's going to be in section 600 and 100. So again, here's a format for you to be able to distinguish. The bidding information is in K, L, and M on supplies and services. It's in section 600 and 100 in a construction contract. Again, those sections would fall off the contract after award or at time of award because they don't apply anymore. Selection's been made. But this is how you figure out where the sections are. And we're going to go through each of these sections rather quickly to try to explain what's in each one and what you're looking for. And at this point, I'd say, is there any questions? But all I can see is Lisa and Terry's head at the moment. So, and they're smiling and nodding, so we're all good. Oops, wrong way. Okay. Here is a brief summary. And again, I don't think we need to spend too much time walking through each one, but these are the different types of forms that the government would issue. You know, there's Form 18 is for an RFQ. Form 33 is for an RFP. It's also for negotiating and awarding contracts. Form 26, again, here, if you see something issued and posted and you're pulling it up and it has this form number, this is just a brief definition of what that form is actually used for and what it's intended to. Like a standard form 1449, they can do a solicitation offer award for commercial products. This form can be used for documenting receipt, inspection, and acceptance. So it's an all-in-one form. There's a part up in the top where it talks about what they're soliciting, how they award it, and down below it's when it's been received and signed off. So here's just a quick little cheat sheet for you to have on all the different types of forms that they would use or that you could expect to see. But I'm going to walk through some of the most standard for us when you're talking about technical proposal is an SF 1442. I just want to highlight some of the areas that you would be looking for and some of the things that you need to understand. The first block, of course, is the solicitation number. If you notice number 4, again, this document is used for both. Number 1 is the solicitation number. Number 4 is the contract number once it's actually awarded. Block 2 is going to tell you, is this a sealed bid? Is it an IFB? And if we've discussed it, IFBs have no technical proposals. Negotiated means that it's an RFP. It is going to have a proposal. So in this case, the one we've pulled up says this is a sealed bid. You're going to get price only. And that's at least the start of what we're going to have to do to submit. Of course, the date issued, the number of pages. Again, the government's programs are all automated now and computer generated. One of the things that I would make sure when you're reviewing a proposal, I'd probably start with the first block there and say, if my pages don't run 1 through 40 and I can't get to 40 or 40, something's missing. And that is a common mistake often made, that something falls off or something gets misnumbered. But in order for you to bid on it and to sign that you're bidding on it, you need to make sure you have all 40 pages and there's not 44 or 46 or 39. So you want to make sure that what you're bidding on, you have seen. Okay, so that's one of the things that, these are just little spot check things that you want to do. And that's a very common mistake. Again, the computer systems will number what they're as good as the information that is put in, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You'll see a spot for the contract number. Again, this document is going to be used to solicit. It's also going to be used to award once they get down to awarding it. The requisition purchase request project number is internal to the government. Don't worry about those. Block 7 will tell you who is actually issuing this contract, who is going to be your procuring contract office. There's a code up there, and that code is their UIC, their unit identification code. If you're interested in that, you'll start to maintain that, because as you bid for other jobs, look for other jobs. You want to know what else the Corps of Engineers here, the US, that's the Corps of Engineers, what other jobs they might have. You can search in FedBizOps, which is now beta.sam, if I got that correctly, Kathy. But that is their UIC. So you can use this information to start tracking what other jobs they have. Other than that, this is just the client that is issuing the RFP and that'll be awarding the RFP. Now, I would say that the information in block 9 is who your contracting officer is and a phone number. And I can guarantee you that if you call that phone number, no one will answer and no one will talk to you. The government's policies are, once they go into the solicitation mode, they like everything in writing. So, I mean, good luck. If you call it, someone may answer, but I'm often surprised that they don't make it real clear that everything needs to be in writing. And sometimes back in the section on instruction to offers, that will be. You'll see in block 10, then they start to talk about the work and description. Usually it's the product, the project title. You'll start to see information in here. Well, before I jump in there, here is a cheat sheet that I like to give you that tells you when you see a solicitation number, here's what it means. And you can use this little cheat sheet to pretty much for the R code, but we're going to talk about that. The UIC we just talked about, the N44255, is a 6-digit number that identifies each contracting agency or office. They're all assigned to local offices. This N44255 happens to be NAFAC Northwest. NAFAC, other offices have just different numbers. Again, this is saying that NAFAC Northwest is the procuring office for the solicitation. That is their unique identification code. The fiscal year tells you simply that, what fiscal year we're working in, or it's been advertised. Sometimes you'll see a RFP that is issued in fiscal year, in this case 15. It doesn't get awarded until 16. The number for the contract will actually convert to a 16. So again, that fiscal year number is telling you what year it was solicited in or is currently active for. If it was a contract award, it would tell you what fiscal year it was awarded. So again, that may switch. The type of instrument, you'll see the table over there to the left, tells you that if it is an R, as stated there, if you look down on the left side, it is a request for proposal. If it was a B, it would be an invitation for bid. Again, these contract numbers are set up to tell you exactly what it is you are looking at. Request for proposal, a Q would be a request for quote. T, I don't know why they say it's a request for quote automated, but again, it could be a T. So those are the 3 or 4 codes you're going to be seeing if it is an action for solicitation. If it is one of the numbers after award, anything in the second column, A, C, D, E, F, that has already been awarded. So when you're looking at contracts, contract numbers, that's how you can easily identify whether it's in the pre-award stage or the post-award stage. The post-award then would tell you if it's a C, it's a standalone contract. If it's a D, it is an indefinite delivery to indefinite quantity contract. And there's some other options there. G, basic ordering agreements. P, it's a purchase order if you're doing supplies. So again, this is a nice little cheat sheet to tell you what you're looking at, whether it's pre-award, post-award, and what the number identifies. The sequential number that follows is just that. It's just a sequential number. The contracting offices just use the next sequential number. If it happens to be 10, that means that they've issued 9 RFPs before. If for some strange reason it has an X following it, very seldom will you see those advertised, but if you happen to see something that has a number, it would probably have a D in the instrument, type of instrument code. That means it's been awarded. It'll have a contract number, which means that has been the awarded contract. The X means that they're advertising for a task order against that basic contract. So again, if you see something that seems a little odd and it's giving you an X number, it's telling you that it's already been awarded and that it is a task order that is out for solicitation. Now, why is that important for perhaps people on the line is that means that some prime contractor is bidding on a task order and it may have an opportunity for some subcontracting opportunities. So just remember that all information you get might be good. So I'm just trying to get you some information on how to read it. Okay. That would be up and above where the numbers are. Again, if it was a pre-award, it would be in block 1. I think it's block 1. And if it was post-award, that number would be in block 4. Some of the first, now the information at the bottom of this form is where you need to start paying close attention. It's going to tell you that you have to perform work, start performance within 10 calendar days and complete it within, and that should be filled in, complete within so many calendar days. The reason I highlight this is because you'll find your completion period several times in the document, and there is a high probability that there could be some conflict. Just start paying attention to this. Make sure that everything on the front page, which is basically your contract document, matches everything else that's in the terms and conditions of the contract. Sometimes they'll update one without updating the other. Towards the end of my career, I just started saying, see the block 11 so that I didn't make that silly mistake over and over again. But you're going to see a date, make sure that it's consistent with the other terms. Now there's a block that says, do you begin performance on notice of award, meaning the minute that this contract is issued, or notice to proceed. Those two are two distinctive periods, and you need to know what, again, is you're signing up for. I have never seen one that said the performance period is negotiable, so I'm not sure why they give us that option, but the government says it's mandatory and it's always going to be checked. If it's negotiable, well, then that's good news. Block 12 will say whether or not you have to furnish any bonds, yes or no. 99.9% of the time they will be yes, and they will give you the calendar days that you have to provide them. This will also correspond with some instructions on how to submit your bid, or especially your price proposal, whether or not your bonds have to be provided, whether they're bid bonds or whether or not you have performance and payment bonds. Those clauses will follow. So again, you're starting to look for inconsistencies. 13 is also an opportunity for there to be some inconsistencies. They will tell you when, how many copies, and what date and time your proposal is due. This information is also stated again in your instructions to offers. Again, you want to make sure that these dates match. And if not, you ask a question. It's important because you don't want to miss a deadline by 2 o'clock, you turned it in at 4 o'clock, or they changed one date and they didn't change the other. Again, just calling your attention to making sure there's no inconsistencies. Block B is whether or not an offer guarantee is required. And then down here on D, they're going to tell you how long does your bid have to be good for. The government, unfortunately, is getting to a point where sometimes that is 60, 90, sometimes even 120 days they want you to hold your bid for them to get enough time to do the award. So pay attention to how long your bid has to be good for. Block D there. That's section A. It's short and sweet. I mean, we spent 10 minutes on it, but I wanted to explain that you need to just what you're reading and why you're looking for that information. Section B will always describe your supplies or services. This is where you're going to generally provide your pricing. This is going to be where they tell you what sub-CLINs, what they call CLINs, contract line items, numbers, sub-CLINs, whether they want you to separate your price and break it down, or even ELINs, and those are for like unit prices or things that they might want to negotiate, say cubic yards of dirt to be moved or something separate. It's important to understand section B on how they want you to break your price down. In section B, there's also going to be some special provisions. There's usually several statements on the front, like you have to be registered in SAM in order to be considered. It's going to tell you when, it's going to highlight information that might otherwise be in the document, but they want to draw attention to, such as what is the site visit date, whether badging and access is required, whether or not you have to hand deliver the proposals. So section B is going to be a very important page for you to pay attention to because it usually has special conditions on it. If it's a construction contract, they're also going to tell you what the magnitude of the construction is or what your limitations are. So they're going to start telling you what range you're going to be in. That's important for you to make sure that you don't spend a whole lot of time preparing a proposal that is, your estimate is twice the estimate that the government has provided. You may want to start looking into whether or not you want clarification on that, those type of things. So again, section B, how do they want you to price it? How is your bid supposed to be broken down? What parts do you fill in? And what are the special requirements? Okay. Again, I would expect to see nods. So Terry, nod your head so I can at least see. Yep, okay. I feel like I'm speaking here in a room all by myself. It's a little disheartening. Section C is where you're going to go to look for the description of the work. The description of the work is going to remain constant. It is going to be the part of the contract that is carried forward from the solicitation to the award. This is what we agreed is the scope of work. This is where the terms and conditions of what work is to be performed. It could include specifications, drawing, narrative descriptions. It is going to tell you what your performance requirements are. It could include references and attachments. You need to, if you're going to bid on it, this is where your technical proposal should be drawn from. You need, in this section, is going to describe what work you're going to perform. So your price, of course, is based on what this description of work is. I caution you that section C, although it is your scope of work and it is the one section that, all people just jump to because this is what I do, this is my wheelhouse, I know what I'm looking for to see what they want me to do. It is written by the technical team. It is written by engineers or technical members and sometimes include additional clauses or conflicts that start to disagree with or conflict with other clauses in terms of the conditions in the contract. So one of the things that I strongly suggest, if you have the time, is one of the first things that I like to do is and I love that they do everything now in PDF, is you can do a word search. I would word search things like clauses or FAR and see what they've included in the technical specification that might conflict with the other parts of the contract. As you get deeper and deeper into it, you'll start to realize that there are some things that they do that are very odd. One of the best examples that I have is in HVAC, they like to have what they call a second season test. You know, you have to, once you install your HVAC system, you do a test on it, you come back what they call the second season. You might test it in the summer, you need to come back in the winter, you need to test it. And they tell you that it's 6 months, 9 months, it has to be in a separate season. Well, oftentimes your contract has expired before that test is even accomplished. So I often say to my technical people, how can you require something that the contract is now closed and finalized? How is the guy supposed to come back and get his badge or perform that work? I mean, you're outside. If you have final release and you've BOD, how do you expect that to happen? So a lot of times you will see things that the technical people have put in their requirements, special testing. They want a special warranty. The warranty clauses in the FAR requires 1 year. You might have something that's written in the technical section now that says, I want a 3-year warranty. So these are just things that you need to, as you get deeper and deeper into your technical proposal, you just want to highlight where the conflicts are. More importantly, you just want to understand that your clauses already provide some of that. Where is there a conflict? Because eventually there will be a conflict that you have to discuss. Okay?
Mona?
Yes.
So this is just a technical thing. On your Zoom, does it say speaker view or gallery view? It's toward the top.
Okay. I don't see that option.
So
What am I looking for?
can you see people at all?
I only see Terry and Lisa right now.
Because they're the only ones that have their video. Oh, no, Michael has his video on. You might need to expand your screen.
Well, okay then.
Sorry, guys.
Nope, that didn't.
So at the top where it says Zoom meeting, if you hover on the right-hand side, speaker view or gallery view should pop up.
Mine says record, disable participants notation, show names of annotators. Hi, show video panel. Is that what I want?
Yeah.
Optimize share for full screen video clip. I don't see.
But now you got a funky black square.
I do.
Uh-huh.
Can you see the slideshow?
Except for the funky black square in the corner.
Is it there now?
That's gone.
Okay. I removed the drop down. I got rid of Terry's face. I'm sorry, Terry.
Okay, never mind. Sorry.
I had a little panel that had a couple people showing up. I got rid of that. Does that help?
Okay, for that, I'll get rid of my face.
I was trying to help you see everybody.
Oh, I see nobody now.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
But you'll let me know if anybody asks a question. How's that?
Yep, I will.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for these technical difficulties, but I am computer challenged, so I will say that right up front. Okay, clauses and provisions. Something I want to make sure that you understand is that a clause is a written term or condition that applies to the contract, meaning after award. So each of the contracts, the government loves their FAR clauses. They love all those things that they add by reference, pages and pages of them. And those will say at the very end of them, if you look at them, end of clause. A provision is something that is written that is a term or condition during the solicitation period that applies and that you need to be aware of. I have seen a number of cases recently when I've assisted with clients, and even some of the proposals I've seen for my company that I work for now, that the clauses and provisions are in the wrong sections. We're going to talk about those sections where they should be. But again, if you have the time, do a word search for provision. You want to find all the terms that you have to agree to before you bid. Certain things like Buy American Act or waivers that you have to submit before you turn it in. You need to see where those provisions are. The contract format requires that they be in section 600 or in section, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, I think it is K and L with the provisions that you have to comply with, and we're going to get to that. But you might want to do a word search just to make sure that your provisions and clauses are in the right spot. You do a search for provision at someplace else, you may again want to make sure that you're saying that I know and understand that I have to bid on that. That's something that is a condition upon my bid. Normally it's a fill-in. Normally it's something you have to certify. So again, you don't want to be non-responsive by not completing those. So just understand the difference in the two terms and where they should be. A quick little explanation as to how to read clauses and provisions. The FAR, the government regulations, have very specific numbering criteria that must be followed. And if you understand them, you'll start to understand what you're seeing and what you're looking for. The first number in any clause is going to tell you what authority that is. So for example, 52.236-13, 52 means that it is a FAR clause, a Federal Acquisition Regulation clause. That is the highest level. That is usually a clause that's interpreted by contract law. The section number 236 tells you which part of the FAR it refers to. The 2 is not important. 36 tells you that it's in response to section 36 of the FAR, which happens to be construction. So if you're looking for disputes, or payments or special provisions like 25, if you start to understand the FAR, you'll start to understand what section. Each clause, if you were to read it, and some of them you need to read, would tell you in the preface what section it refers to, and you can just click on that. The sequential number is just that, a sequential number. If the FAR cannot be lessened or reduced, it can only be enhanced upon. So if the defense Federal Acquisition Regulation, and the defense says, I hear you, FAR, but I want to add more strict requirements. I can make it more stringent, I can't reduce them. You would see a 2 in front of it. So a DFAR number is 252. It'll have the same section number, and it has its own number that's been assigned to them. They've been told all your clauses have to start with 7s. Okay, now NFAS, the Naval Facilities Acquisition Supplement, I think it's called now. I think that there's been a change in terms. It says, I hear you, FAR. I see you, DFARs, because you're my higher authority, but I'm going to take it even more stringent. And some of those things might be like profit margins or limits, or how high a fee can be, or what kind of documentation is required. Again, they cannot reduce it. They can only enhance it or clarify it. If the FAR did not give a response time or a period for a claim to be filed or something similar to that, each of them could make it more stringent. So if you're reading any of your clauses, the first number will tell you under what authority or who's issuing that. Okay. Clauses and provisions, again, very quickly, you'll see 52.211-10 is a fill-in clause. Any fill-in clause is supposed to be provided in full text because it has to be filled in. But again, you'll see at the end, it says end of clause. That means it applies after award. If it says end of provision, you'll see in the numbering system, there is no definition as to whether that's a pre-award or post-award. It's an end of provision. It's saying that it contemplates award of a firm fixed price contract. After it's been awarded, that term, it will be awarded as a firm fixed price, but after award, that provision has no bearing or on the actual document itself then. So again, clauses and provisions can be incorporated by reference. They can be provided in full text. Any fill-in clause has to be provided in full text. And as you become an expert in bidding, you'll know, oh, wait a minute, that was supposed to be edited. Where is it? It will identify whether it is a provision or a clause, and you can confirm that at the very end of each one. And there's also something I might reference as a Christian doctrine. If you're new to this, it will have no meaning to you right now, but eventually as you get into this, Christian doctrine says that if it is a matter of law and it should have been included, it is included. So eventually you have to become a FAR expert to do government contracting on a real regular basis, but I wouldn't worry about that at this point. Basically what I want you to understand is the difference between clauses and provisions, just so you know where to look for as to what you're bidding on, okay? Let's get through the rest of this. If in section D, if you are providing supplies or any kind of deliveries, they're going to tell you how to package and market. Again, you're going to see there's some descriptions. And in this case, I just included clauses incorporated by full text. You'll see that they also have some, but this is a unique numbering system, which to be honest, I don't know where they came up with this because again, there are some regulations and I'm not sure how they came up with it, but it's a homegrown clause that they said, oh, by the way, when we hear the FAR, we hear the DFAR, this is our own requirement, okay? Now, I find that interesting because now that I am on both, have been on both sides of the fence, the fact that the supplies, they've included a provision that says, the supplies furnished herein shall be packaged in accordance with best commercial practices. We're going to talk about this when we get to technical proposal. What does best commercial practice mean? So in all fairness, it's almost kind of a non-binding clause. But if you were looking to how to package, how to deliver, if I'm not providing services on site or construction, again, I'm looking at supplies. Section D would say, how do I have to package it and market? A lot of times now they're asking that they be barcoded and certain things that have to be done. So you want to just get familiar with what you have, how you would have to deliver it. Section E is going to cover your inspection and acceptance clauses. It's going to tell you where the work will be inspected and by whom. Sometimes the inspection criteria has been downloaded to a different agency, like DCM. Okay, I'm going to forget their name or who they are at the moment.
DCMA.
DCMA, I knew I was on the right track, kind of. So there is a government agency that has been designated to do some inspection. That's primarily what they do. They may come out to your site, they may come out to your plant, and they may be required and tasked to perform the inspection before it's delivered. So again, Section E is going to tell you where the work will be inspected and by whom. Do I deliver it to your site and you'll inspect it? Are you going to come to my site and inspect it? And it will tell you dates and times and who's going to do that. It again can include references by full text. There will be some local requirements. It's going to tell you whether it's FOB destination, first article inspection. Those are things that you want to look for to make sure that if you do have special inspection requirements that you adhere to them before you price it, okay? Again, here's kind of just a quick example. They're going to say CLIN. Remember, CLINs are how you price it. So I might have 5 different line items. It's going to be inspected at destination. It's going to be inspected by the government. It's going to be accepted at the destination and accepted by the government. This is pretty standard, but you can also find it where they might say inspected at your site and accepted at destination, meaning you've got to be responsible for the shipping in between. So again, if you're providing supplies, this would not apply to construction. This is where you would find how and when it's going to be inspected and accepted. Again, a quick glance before you write your technical proposals or anything unique that's going to happen. If it is going to be inspected, first article testing, you're going to want to talk about that in your proposal. So again, a quick review of Section E tells you that. Here is a clause that might be incorporated in one that says, you know, certificate of conformance. So again, you might want to inspect that, review it very quickly to see if you have any clauses that have to be filled in. Okay. F is deliveries or performance. Where the work will be delivered. Again, Section E is inspection and acceptance. F is going to talk about deliveries or performance. Again, you're going to have where will the work be delivered, clauses by reference, clauses by full text. This is where you'll start to see conflicts in the completion date. They are computer generated by modification. I would always triple check. Matter of fact, I just saw a contract award the other day that had a firm date because the government's computer system requires a completion date. They don't understand a floating completion. The computer does not understand a floating completion date. So where it was, 360 days after notice to proceed, we haven't gotten the notice to proceed, so the clock hasn't started. The computer doesn't understand that. So in this case, they said the firm date is going to be 360 days from award. Now we have a conflict. So again, just be advised that that's where these conflicts start to show up. Computers don't think as well as humans do in that sense, that we didn't know we weren't firm. Okay. Again, you're going to see the cleanse. You're going to see the delivery date. You're going to see where it's going to be shipped to and what the UIC is, what the quantity is. In some cases in supplies, you might have them shipped to multiple locations. That's, it's very familiar. You'll start to see terms like AF/ATA after first article testing, those types of things. So, and there will be an explanation or a definition, but this again, quick review of just where you've got to deliver, who's going to inspect it. Okay. There will be some clauses you'll see here: stop work order, government delay of work. What does FOB destination mean? Again, a quick review of the clauses. Okay. Section G, or Section 800, if it was a construction clause, is where some key information is about your contract admin. This is going to be, again, not too much related to how you're going to bid it, except that it might affect how you price it. It's going to include your invoicing instruction and payment instructions. It's going to talk about electronic payrolls, or may have a requirement. More and more, all of the payrolls now are submitted electronically. That's a cost to you. Who is going to be your contracting authority? One office might award it. They might download it to someone else to administer. It's going to describe your wage determinations, how much you have to pay your people. It may talk about your field office overhead, your coefficients, what is needed for pricing. It's going to explain whether there's bonding and insurance requirements. It may discuss partnering, things like that. So Section G is it is your post-award administration for contract admin, but it could affect your pricing, and you should make sure that you review it to make sure. You may not have to talk about it technically, but you do want to make sure that you have priced it accordingly. Section H, or again, Section 800, if it's a construction contract, is what I refer to as homegrown clauses or requirements. Section I, which follows, interestingly enough, it follows H, are your mandatory clauses that cannot be changed with unless you get a legal waiver, and that's never going to happen. So Section I we're going to talk about that, but Section H is an opportunity for some of the local commands or the local office who's awarding this to have what I call homegrown clauses or requirements. It's again a way of saying, I see all the clauses, I want to write my own, or I want to have a term and condition that I want to add to it that is generally a contractual one, not a technical one, a contractual one. It may talk about, I've seen cases where they might refer to an ombudsman. If you have a problem, this is the person that you call. Let me see if I have any other references. This is a clause that just, again, they were writing, they're trying to say, see, I see the FAR requirement, but we've determined that more than 7 days is needed for construction. So here's the days, we're going to give you 45, there's some conditions. Be very careful of these clauses and read them. Again, you're bidding on it, you're accepting these terms. I'm just cautioning you to look for conflicts and look for anything that may affect your pricing. It's definitely an area that you want to call out if you see conflicts in terms of what the requirements are versus what you're bidding versus what the other clauses are, and ask a PPI. But again, this is not specifically required for technical proposal writing. It's just something you should review, or at least do a cursory review to make sure you don't have any conflicts. Section I, or Section 700 in a construction contract, includes the FAR clauses, DFAR clauses, and FAST clauses that are incorporated as is. They could be fill-ins, but the terms of the clauses are not altered. So they are established. There are hundreds of them. And when I say hundreds, I mean hundreds. They like to include everything from double-sided printing to, Child Labor Act to, just everything that they could possibly cover. You want to make sure that you at least eventually, if you become a contractor, that the government is your client and you do this on a regular basis. I strongly encourage you to eventually print out all the clauses and read them as time allows. There are some buried things in there that are unique that could hold you up. There are rights and recoveries. It talks about notification requirements, time frames, things like that. One of the things that happens though is that the date changes. But again, this is kind of contracting 401. This is postgraduate school. It's not going to really affect your technical proposal. Just be aware of them. This is where you would look to find them. Again, here are just a small sample of what you can expect. There could be 3-4 pages of single line items. In this case, we're talking about what does the government mean in their definitions? What is a gratuity? You can't have any kickbacks. You have to have a business ethics and conduct program. What are your safety requirements? Things like that. Eventually, you need to be aware of these. Matter of fact, it probably was 20 years and I finally got requested to ask them for a contractor to provide his ethics program printed. And I actually had to go read the clause because we had never asked for one before. But there is a requirement right here that you provide, you have a business code of ethics and conduct. And it has to include things like, how to notify if you see waste, fraud, and abuse, and counterfeit items and things like that. So there are some very obscure requirements, but this is where they would be. There's also some fill-ins. This is where you would find they would have some not only by reference, but they will also have some that need to be filled in. And this is where you would want to go make sure these are things like what's your period of performance, whether or not you have LDs, what kind of task orders can I expect, what are the limitations, who are my points of contact, those types of things. So I would peruse those before you ever turn in a bid. Attachment J is supposed to be a list of attachments. I regretfully see more and more where section C is down to 1 page, which is your scope of work. And then they say see attachment J for all of the actual terms and performance requirements. I can't say one's better than the other. I don't think it's supposed to be intended to be that way. Attachments are supposed to be for informational material, attachments, guides, instructions that are follow-up, but sometimes they can have very specific work performance requirements. So make sure that if you're bidding this and doing a technical proposal, that you make sure that there isn't anything in J that you need to actually address or perform to. They all are contractual requirements, but sometimes they bury a lot of the actual work that needs to be done in section J. So cross-reference C and J very carefully. Section K, now we're getting into the solicitation, your proposal requirements and instructions. Section K or section 600 in a construction contract would be your reps and certs. There are clauses that are incorporated by reference and there are clauses that are in full text. In today's environment, most of your reps and certs are online in SAM. Again, you must be registered in SAM to receive a government award, and your reps and certs are in there. What I caution you about very carefully is that there are always some remaining reps and certs to be completed. So make sure that you do read this very carefully and that you do submit the ones that they require. I also caution you to go into your reps and certs and make sure that your reps and certs are applicable or completed for this acquisition. One of the things that is tripping contractors up is that the reps and certs in SAM now are global by company. I worked with a client who had checked the box that they would not use, they would always use shipping by US flagship, meaning that they would not use any foreign shipping. And that was general, but in one particular contract, the only way you could ship to this island, there was no US flagships that went to this island. They could not get any shipping to this island. And by the fact that the reps and certs was not changed or clarified, it caused a very extensive, costly problem for them. So again, when you're bidding on something, make sure that you're reviewing your reps and certs. They have to go with your price proposal. Make sure you complete the ones that they give you separately. But if your reps and certs are online, please go in and check them that they are in fact applicable to the proposal that you're turning in, and that there is.
Mona,
Yes.
what is PPI?
Oh, a PPI is a pre-proposal inquiry, and I am going to talk about those before we go too much further. Let me see how far down that is. Bear with me just a sec. Okay, it's in the next section that we're going to talk about PPIs and give some really good examples. So if you can bear with me, we'll talk about it very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. So again, check your reps and certs, because this is now one of the first sections that in your proposal you could get disqualified for just for not checking a box. And we don't want you to spend a lot of time bidding this, doing a technical proposal, putting your price together, and then be bounced because you didn't do something proper. So section K is the first section that you're actually going to start paying attention to what you're submitting. And again, please go in and check your SAM certifications that they are applicable to the procurement you're working on. Again, so you'll have some clauses that are incorporated by reference. One of them is, again, disclosure of ownership and control of a government of a terrorist country. This is these are a little odd clauses that they're incorporated by reference, but what it says in the provision is that by your proposal, you certify that you are not owned or controlled by a terrorist company. So those, again, you want to at least review them. Those are FAR clauses or DFAR clauses. You can see 52, 252. 252s mean it's a DFAR clause, which means they've added some requirements. You'll see, again, the full reps and certs. They'll tell you what the CAGE code is and the small business size standard. This will start to play into how you certify your company and what the requirements are for your certification in SAM. Again, construction is pretty consistent, but you'll find a varying amount of small business size standards in supplies and services. So make sure that you go to this section and figure out by the classification of the NAICS, the North American Industry Classification System, what they've called these services and what your size standard is, because companies do change size based on that criteria. Okay. Again, there's some information. You've checked all these. Make sure that you complete it in full. Section L or section 100 is your first glance at what the instructions to the offerer are. You need to pay close attention to this section. We're going to talk about this the rest of the class, because this is where if you fail to provide some instructions or don't follow exactly what they're talking about, this is where you could get disqualified. We're going to talk about how to prepare checklists for cross-referencing. We're going to watch for date changes. Again, this falls off, but this is where you're going to start paying attention to what am I being instructed to do. You're going to see, again, some clauses by reference. Interestingly enough, there is some clauses in here that, brand name or equal, which requires if I'm going to call them out, I, again, have to tell you that ahead of time. So it's sometimes odd to me that we incorporated things by reference, but we actually ask you to fill in or report, okay? So we're gonna come back to, in the rest of the class, we're gonna talk about this instruction to offers and how it is a conflict with some of the instruction given, but we're gonna talk about that in the next segment. Section M is, Section L is gonna tell you what you need to submit. Section M is going to tell you how they're going to evaluate it. Now the government, most protests after award are based on the government not doing what they said they were going to do. It's very rarely going to be for an interpretation of what the evaluation subjectiveness was. It's going to be based on whether or not they followed the instructions that they were supposed to follow. So you need to have these two hand in hand. L, what I'm required to submit, 4 pages of a technical description. M is going to tell you, of that 4 pages that you submitted, what are they evaluating it for? You cannot do one without the other. And this is what we're going to talk about very clearly in the next section. The two go hand in hand, okay? Don't get lost in, I remind you, don't get lost in the government's process. It's very much a checklist. They're very straightforward. They will be very specific. This is what we're going to evaluate it for. If they don't evaluate it for, those are generally the basis of any bid protest. So they're very specific, okay? That is kind of a quick review of how to read a contract. I'm going to open it up. Kathy, is there any questions? I mean, it's global. I hope we've touched on at least some of the sections you should be paying attention to.
No questions. You guys, are you all awake? Hello?
This is Lisa. I have a question.
I'm gonna go get the other, go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, so on the clauses and provisions, what do you coach people to look for? When you say fill in clauses or I think it was fill in clauses, that's new information to me as far as I understand to read the clauses and understand provisions. But what part, when you say fill in clauses, what does that mean?
There are some clauses that are required to be filled in, and you'll see them, you won't see them until you open up the clauses, and there'll be a line in the parentheses that says contracting officer will insert, the date, the time,
Mona, you're cutting out.
I haven't found a way to create a 104-page document, and then I can do my word searches, contract officer, fill in, those types of things. Any other class or time, I would encourage anybody that wants to take government contracting seriously to download the first set of clauses. You don't have to read them all at once, but eventually I would download them. I set up a book, and then I do go through and highlight anything that should be fill in, and that way I'm just training myself that in the future contracts I know to go look for that information. Okay.
Okay.
I haven't found an easy way, unless Terry or Mary Jo have come up with an easy way to do that. I mean, you can get the clauses online, but actually knowing which one apply to you. I mean, of the thousands, 200 might apply to you, and you got to get to those. So I've created clause books, and that's how I manage mine.
Okay. So the best advice to anybody on this, anybody that wants to do contracting, government contracting, is to read everything.
Eventually, yes.
Yes. Okay.
I know it's impossible to do the first, in the 30 days that they give you to do your first proposal. But again, if you're going to do this seriously, it's where you want to be. You want to eventually create your own clause book. I mean, I would strongly suggest that if you have the time or maybe staff to do it, that you print it out anyway. But I do realize that if people bid on, even my own company that I work for, we might bid on 20 projects and get 4. I don't want to have to print out a clause book for the 16 I didn't get.
Right.
Eventually, I have a standard or a basic clause book so that when a solicitation comes out, I know how to look for those fill-in clauses. I know to look for the certain things that are unique or out of the ordinary that they might have put in there. For example, we just are bidding or just was awarded a contract in Diego Garcia. They don't have the Buy American Act, but they have the Payments, Balance of Payments Act, which is the same thing. Again, I need to bid on, my company needs to bid on the Buy American Act or the clause that applies. And so I had that flagged as a potential that those are things we need to be aware of. And they did change. So Davis-Bacon versus standard labor laws in the area. Small business, there's a lot of things overseas that don't apply. So eventually I would have a clause book, I would have a standard one, and I would compare each solicitation against it, looking for those fill-ins or looking for things that they were supposed to have provided. Can you do it on each one? No, there's just time does not allow, you know. You'd spend 3 weeks trying to read clauses before you could ever get to writing.
And you're held to those clauses, correct?
Yes.
So as far as the people that have just started, and I think most of these people have just started or getting interested in, it's a process. It's not like the first time you go in, like you said, you only have so much time to respond. So start getting familiar with clauses, and keeping a book of them is great. And if you continue to see the same ones, then you're now saying that's priority. I need to really understand this one.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of just little subtleties that will eventually trip you up. I mean, on both sides, especially when I work with small businesses, they haven't taken the time to do that. You know, do you have to have the EEO posters, you know, posted? Do you have to have a compliance plan? Do you have to have things, little itty bitty things that could trip you up, you know?
Inclusion plans.
Yeah.
Right.
They're buried in clauses that the government just assumes you understand. And a lot of small businesses have not taken the time to get those little nuances. The earth-shattering ones are evident, or they should be evident. It's the little things that you just don't want to be tripped up on. For example, there's cost accounting standards that you have to comply with, which means your bookkeeping has to be in a certain format and comply with certain things. These are things, if you want to do business with the government, you need to start educating yourself on what are their nuances, what do I have to do, how long do I have to keep my records, you know, how much insurance do I have to carry, those types of things. And so, you know, yeah, you may not have time on your first bid to do it, but I can guarantee you're going to be held accountable to it. And eventually you want to educate yourself. So if this is a client you want to work with, you want to start understanding everything that they've buried in those clauses. Okay.
Are there, I know this is the question that everybody asks me, is there like the top 10 that are generally, it's a gross generality question, but are there a top 10 that everybody should know?
I would say that there are probably, matter of fact, I pulled some for the last 3 contracts we got. There's 104 pages. I would say hundreds versus top 10.
Okay.
But if you're going to talk top 10, yeah, I could give you the top 10. But again, any one of them could be, you know, you can't be debarred. You can't hire subcontractors that are debarred. You know, you can't have, have any confidentiality statements from your employees. You know, there are just little things that could trip you up. But the clauses also, what's important to the clauses is not only what you have to do, but the clauses offer you the rights and remedies, how you're going to recover. So they give you the clauses that tell you, you've got 10 days to notify us of this change. You know, if you have a differing site condition, you have to notify us before you alter the site, you know. So not only are there clauses you have to comply with, but there are clauses that tell you how the parties are going to act and what responsibilities are.
Yep.
So we do segregate those out. We have a class on rights and remedies, and I have a cheat sheet for construction on the clauses that you can seek recovery under. I mean, because those are critical. You got to have those up front so that you meet your time frames. So, you know, gosh, I would say, again, if I had to say the top 10, we could probably come up with a list. But, you know, it's really more like a top 100.
Okay. Got it. It's a question that I've been asked, and I simply give the information as you need to be aware of every clause that's in your contract.
Yeah.
And if it stumps you and you don't have that and you're asked of it, you're held responsible for the consequences of not having it. So that is a part of government contracting.
Yeah, I mean, okay, is the fact that there's a clause that you're supposed to use recycled paper and print double-sided, is that really important? You know, probably not. But on the same token, Buy American Act is going to cost you a lot of money if you have not planned to buy something appropriately, you know?
Right.
So little things like that. There's a lot more requirements nowadays for EEO and compliance with labor laws and you know, veterans' rights, and there's just so many clauses now that are out there to protect the workforce and all of those areas that, yeah, if you're going to deal with this client, you should know what you're buying into, because when you sign that contract, you're buying it. Okay. Do I understand that it's impossible to read them on the first one? Yes. But you need to find a way to educate yourself on a real regular basis of where it's going. Okay. Any other questions? Everybody still hanging in there? Okay, I'm going to try let's see if I can get the second one up. We're going to try to get through part 2 and see if we can get through part 2 today. And that'll leave us with part 3, which is really kind of the fun, I guess the fun part. I really enjoy that section because a lot of this is just Mona talking. So let me see if I can, oops. Let's try share screen again and see where I can get. Bear with me, bear with me. Okay, where did it go?
So Lisa, this is Terry. While Mona's looking for that, let me address, I think your question was for your clients, the contractors, when they get a solicitation, how do they know the difference between a clause by reference and a clause in full text? There, in most federal agency solicitations, there will be pages of clauses that are by reference, and we saw a page there that they just list the number and the title and the year and month that it was issued. Any clauses that are in full text have to be local agency clauses and clauses that are fill in the blank, like Mona said.
Okay.
It doesn't matter to the small business contractor which way they are. They need to
Terry, we're losing your voice.
be aware of all those clauses, whether in full text or by reference. That's it.
Terry, I wasn't able to hear you. You're muted.
Or lost. Yeah, you faded out, so.
You were fading out.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, so the main thing I was saying for your clients, the small business contractor that has a solicitation and submits proposals on solicitations, is that the only difference between a clause incorporated by reference and one that is in full text is that the full text has spaces in it where the contract specialist or contracting officer has to fill it in. They're both important. The contractor needs to understand both, whether it's by reference or it's in full text. If it's an
Oh, again, Terry, you faded out.
okay.
Okay, no. Now we got you. I'm sorry.
I don't know what's going on. I'm not doing anything here.
Come closer.
Okay. So your client,
Yes.
the small business contractor who has a solicitation in front of them and are going to, on a regular basis, be submitting proposals, the only thing different between a clause incorporated by reference and one that's full text is that the full text one, the contract specialist or contracting officer has to fill in a blank or more than one blank in that clause, as Mona said. And both of them are important, whether it's by reference or in full text. And each solicitation may have different clauses in it. So even if you're in the same business, same industry, submitting proposals, you got to read the entire solicitation because those clauses could change for the type of solicitation.
That is helpful because I
and they
still
can differ-
wasn't.
And they can differ from agency to agency. Department of Energy can have its own clauses, and Naval Supply Systems Command can have different clauses.
Right. Thank you, Terry. That's helpful.
Yeah, there is no easy solution. I mean, bottom line is, if I was a contracting officer, I would tell you they all apply and you're signing up for it. The reality of it is they never give you enough time to start, from scratch and learn them. So Just be cautious and educate yourself as quickly as you can. I think one of the things that we might be able to do is like I said, I have a standard construction clause book. That doesn't mean that it's all of them, but I have pulled them. You know, we might be able to post that at the PTACs so that you can at least call them up. I mean, we're not saying that that's the exact ones, but it should be at least a starting point to add or subtract from. You know, and that might help, because pulling those, it takes hours to pull them, cut and paste them, put them together in a document for you to read, or to actually weed through all of the thousands of clauses. So there are some ways to get those. I have one for construction. I have flow down clauses. There's another thing. Your clauses, the government is less than forthright, and they expect you to know it. But of those clauses, there is let's say 20 of 100 that are what we consider mandatory flow down clauses. They are mandatory in the sense that you, as a subcontractor, must include them in any subcontracts or purchase orders you issue. And it's kind of obscure. The government doesn't tell you that. And so that's what I spend a lot of time doing. That's one of the other things that I do is I pull all my clauses together. And again, we can post some of the general ones. I haven't done it for supplies and services, but I'm sure we could collectively get together and do that and share that. But I go through and highlight where fill-ins are in one color. I also highlight in a different color the mandatory flow down clauses. If you issue any subcontracts or lower tier supply contracts, purchase orders, you have to pass those clauses down. You're required to do that. And since I am the contracts manager for Nova Group, that's one thing that I do is I have to go through and pull all the mandatory clauses, and I have to make sure that my subcontract documents have those clauses to flow down as well. So there are some obscure requirements that the government is not necessarily forthright about what you have to do. And it can be an entrapment type thing for somebody that is not well versed in it. And one of the disadvantages I find, and I'm sure Terry and Mary Jo can agree, is that the execution side of the government doesn't really recognize your small business size standard or who you are as a new firm. They expect you to be fully capable of doing the job. So you get little slack for being a small business that's just starting out. They expect you to know that. And that's a disadvantage that we want to make sure that it's not intended to scare anybody, but it's intended to say this is reality. And we have seen small businesses, you know, be hurt by the lack of, I don't know, program support, if that's a proper way to say it. Did I do that okay, Mary Jo? Are you still there?
May I add one thing on clauses?
Yes.
So it's important that the contractors who are considering putting in proposals are aware that new contract clauses come about all the time. So for example, the last 2 years that I worked as a contracting officer, there were something like 8 new clauses that were mandatory, and they were effective the date that they were issued, and we had to start putting them in our solicitations. Also, the other thing for the contractors to consider, not to get complacent when they see a clause with that title that, you know, it was issued in May of 1984. They may have just updated it this year. So don't get complacent. Look, you know, they may have read and be familiar with that clause from 1984, but they need to look at that date also, because it could have got revised in May of 2020. You know, that's a red flag. Oh, that's the same old clause, but something's been changed on there because it's been updated. So they need to read it again and see what the change is. And also I would add that clauses can drive price. So they need to be familiar with the contents of the clauses because they can drive their price.
And we could do a whole class on that. We probably should, you know, really just on clauses. And again, I've pulled those clauses. I'm willing to share those clauses, not as, you know, not as gospel, but as a starting point so that people can read them and start being familiar with them. But the reason we bring it up here in the technical proposal part is because it is a reminder. If you're bidding on a contract, you're buying those clauses. You know, you're signing up for those. And we just want you to be aware of it. Like Terry said, it could affect your price. It could also affect your technical proposal. So,
Mona, that I believe would be a great tool for people to understand the enormity of it and
yes,
have a starting point, because it's really hard for somebody starting out to understand how much it takes to get to that finish line properly.
Yes.
And without examples and sheer, a starting point to help them get a foothold, I find many folks put it aside and say, I'll get to it later. And that's not the right attitude, but that is something that happens. And I don't ever want somebody to get into something where they're going to be overwhelmed.
Yes.
Of
Or hurt.
getting a contract and then
Yeah.
putting themselves out of business.
Yeah.
There are some really risky things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Kathy, matter of fact, Kathy was just asking for some new classes, and I think that might be a great class that we could talk about, is just clauses. Like I said, I have them set up for my, for most of the construction, and I have the flow down clauses, and it's very easy for me to share that. I don't think it would be too difficult for us to put together the services and supply, standard clauses. So I think that'd be a great class. So
Great.
I'm sure
Thank
Kathy
you.
is listening, and Kathy will write that down.
I've got it written down.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, okay, let's start to jump into now proposal preparation part 2. And again, this is a little introductory. It's kind of gearing you up for what is required, but we're going to talk about, can everybody see my screen again? Is that a yes? Can you guys see my?
We can. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, these are things we've already said. I just want to draw attention to it, how important it is to write a plus proposal. The government contracting over there to the side is a world of, it has its own language, it has its own ritual. As now working for clients that do both private work and government work, there is a night and day difference. Working with the government is a good business. They are a good client. They have a lot of work and a lot of jobs. Everything can be bought, but it is not for the faint of heart. Again, we tie this into proposal preparation, is that if you miss a step or assume that you've always done a proposal that will work, you have to remember there are 2 or 10 contractors waiting right behind you to step over you. I have seen during my lifetime, I'm sure Terry has too, where a incumbent contractor who might have had a previous contract, or like we say, one of our MACs or the boss contract, who is established and thinks that because they're on the site or they have done the work, that they are just by name recognition can submit a proposal and just get by. And we have seen incumbent contractors get bounced because their technical proposal did not address what it was supposed to do. The government, in all fairness, is very regimented in the sense that they are not to be subjective. They are to be totally objective. They go down their checklist, and if you don't provide what they've asked for, you will be bounced. So we want to try to encourage you that it is an expensive process. It is something that your company, especially if you're a small business and you're starting out, this is an expense that you need to have pay off. You can't afford to keep making mistakes. I know that this information is outdated now because it just happened right after I left. But there was an example of where a multiple award construction contract, what we refer to as a MAC, was awarded by NAVFAC to 6 contractors. And what they do is they had 29 offers. They have a 2-phase. They narrow it down from 29 to 15. And they say of those now, of the 29, if you were technically acceptable, you moved forward. Of those 15, now they're going to narrow it even more and probably base it on price, but only 6 of those are going to be awarded contracts. Only the A+ proposals were moved forward. I mean, you had to be stellar. The problem with this is that if you're a construction contractor, the MAC contract, it had a base and 4 option years, which is now probably expired, and I don't know what the new numbers are, up to $99 million worth of construction. And that was the only way that the government, NAVFAC, is going to buy construction, is through this MAC. So for the next 5 years, if you were not an awardee, you did not have an opportunity to get any of this work. So again, your proposal could make a difference of 5 years before your opportunity to bid this again. And that's the same thing with services, or the Seaport E at Keyport, or some of the supplies. Now, if you're a supply contractor, you have a better chance of of the onesie twosie buys. But if you're looking for a major contract for a longer duration, if you do not write an A+ proposal, and there are people competing against you, if you miss a step or forget to check a block, or they can't understand it, we're going to talk about that too. The government does not like to think that they need to interpret, understand, or search for information in your proposal. If it is not evident, if it is not clear, you will be downgraded for it. So this is just some of the preliminary things we want to talk about. What we are going to talk about, though, is how you need to consider setting up your team members. You need to develop a schedule, outline proposal, attend the site visit, draft proposal, ask questions. We're going to talk about PPIs. We're going to talk about your final proposal, the importance of a red team review, what we call a red team review, and then, of course, to make sure that you're planning for the unexpected. We do not talk about pricing. We do not talk about marketing. We do not necessarily talk about understanding your client other than to explain what you see and how to respond to it. We're not going to talk about any of the process that goes into whether you should bid or not bid. We're going to talk about technical proposals and what you need to do to make an A+. Most of this section right here is based on experience now that we've had. Mary Jo and I worked with a couple clients right when I started that were actually bounced from a proposal based on mistakes that were already, I mean, basically mistakes by the government that the information was provided there. So we've learned that if you don't develop schedules and outline your proposal, these are mistakes you're going to trip up on. So we're offering this as advice. Okay. Now this information I know is far-fetched for these small businesses that, you know, are onesie twosie people. I mean, you're the CEO, proposal writer, and chief cook, bottle washer. But we want to talk about what the roles and responsibilities are and how each one is important. And if you have the opportunity to either get an independent review or have someone assist you, or at least understand the differences in the roles and why these roles are important. And even if you are just one person, you have to perform different roles because they serve different purposes. A blue team is going to be considered the team that writes the technical portion of it. The blue team is considered the individuals that might be working on the contract or understanding the scope or implementing the actual work, the construction or building the material or whatever. They're the ones that understand the technical aspects of it, and they're probably going to write most of your technical proposal. They're going to write it, though, and the reason we talk about this, they're going to write it as if they are building it or they're the technical person, and sometimes they overlook some of the contractual requirements of what the proposal is actually calling for. They have a term called a pink team, and I did not make these terms up, trust me. They talk about how to enhance it, take it from the 65 to 70% complete, you know, how to make it presentable in the sense of, you know, graphics and tables. They're taking it one level above the worker bee who I actually be building the dang thing, okay? And that's, again, you just need to be advised or think about these different roles, even if it's one person. What am I doing in what phases? Am I writing what has to happen? And then I need to take a whole different look at it and say, now, how do I present this in a way that looks more like a presentation or a technical proposal, or somebody's reviewing it for a grade versus just writing, I'm going to build this box, okay? A red team, what we refer to as the red team, is your review team. Ideally, it is somebody who has not actually written it. You would be surprised how many people, and myself included, can read your own mistakes. I can read over a typo every single time, because I know what I meant and my brain is actually kicked into, I know what I meant when I wrote it. I'm not actually reading what I wrote. So red team is somebody that did not write it, somebody that is reviewing it and comparing it to what was required. They're judging it. They're looking at whether or not it was responsive, whether or not it met the criteria. You know, is it clear? Is it understandable? And how is somebody who did not write it going to interpret it? And again, each of these might be the same person. Ideally, a red team is somebody that's separate. And I know the PTAC does some of the service for you. They will not write it, but they will review it for you. So you can get the PTAC to do your red team review and help you when they read it for the first time as to what you're really trying to say. The green team, of course, is, or the person or the position is your pricing. You know, they're going to be responsible for making sure that what your technical proposal is covered by your price proposal, and your price proposal reflects what your technical proposal says. So you've got somebody that's actually pricing what you said and reviewing what you said is within the price that you can perform. Okay? Of course, they would like to say that there's a gold team, you know, somebody that'll look at the whole thing. Usually this is somebody that is higher in the food chain, maybe the CEO or the CFO, somebody that's going to say, yep, that's what where we want to be. Oftentimes, and we know this is sometimes how proposals are put together, and the government is not oblivious to this, is that after you write the whole thing, they may take 10% off just because they want to be competitive. This is what the gold team is doing, is they're looking at where do I need to be and where do I need to make sure that I am competitive. And of course, the white team, we talk about the white team. We talk about, you know, it should be signed by the highest level. You know, it gets the white glove, the person that signs off on it is the CFO or a CEO saying, I stand behind my company and we stand behind this. So again, I've given you a little cheat sheet just in the terms of the biggest mistakes we see are that people don't recognize the different roles and what has to happen. And I said it before, and I'll reiterate it, we can see it when we read it. You can tell if somebody hasn't polished it or sent it to a second review. We can tell if one person saw it all the way through. We can tell if the level of competency of who wrote it, whether they're cut and pasted and didn't review it. It's also evident, which we will get into on Friday, as to whether or not you had a proposal writer that knows nothing about your company. That is very evident in proposals. So the reason we stress this is these are things that we could just dive into helping you write a proposal. These are things that you need to do, key basic understandings of how to write a proposal. How does it have to be separated and why is there different roles and responsibilities? So use this to think about those. And when you're doing a checklist, you know, sign off. Again, it may be one person. Hopefully you've got at least two because you need an independent review. And hopefully you've got a person that can separate the price from the proposal so that you can make sure, because the government has two different teams reviewing it. I guarantee you that the people that are technically reviewing it are not looking at the price, that there is a team put together to look at the price and the technical proposal overall, but they are done separately to make sure that there is that distinction. The two don't just overlap on each other.
And Mona brought up a really good point that PTAC is a team, very much can be that. Allowing for some time. It's sometimes a flood of people that need proposal review. And I had to reach out to a number of coworkers to help with that. I had 4 at the same time. So Terry took one, I took 2, and then the other one, they decided not to go after it. So it wasn't that overwhelming, but to really give your effort and energy to it as a PTAC, we need some time. So I know Mona will talk about a timeline and how to prepare for this, but keep that in mind that we can be that independent review.
Yeah, and you really need it. If at all possible, again, we can see those mistakes. When you read it, you see those mistakes. It's very few people write books and send them out to print without an editor. You know what I mean? It's that step that says, I think you meant to say this, but you didn't say that.
Correct.
So it's a very important step. So who do you need to write a proposal? Again, I know I'm dealing with small businesses. I know that when I give you this list, everybody goes, oh my God, it's me and my brother-in-law. How are we going to do this? But, you know, you need to consider, do I need a project manager? You know, who are my major subcontractors and suppliers? You know, can they help? Can they provide some information, especially technical information on parts or materials or description of what has to happen or what should be supplied? Do I need designer engineers? Is this something that is it just build what the government told me to build, or do I have to give them a fire sprinkler system layout? You know, who do I need to reach out to as a major subcontractor to get that information? Whether or not you have quality control. Now, that's one of the things that in small businesses is they overlook, is that there's very stringent quality control requirements and people to oversee it that act independently. And those are people you need to start bringing on board if you're going to do government work, separate quality control inspections. And so you want them involved in how you're reviewing your technical proposal. If it's construction, or if it's engineers, or if it's somebody, you want your superintendents, you want the guys that are in the field that are telling you, yeah, you might be telling them one thing, but that's not how it's really going to be built, and that's not how we see it. So again, you want those people involved, or at least to ask them for their input. A scheduler, more and more in today's environment, the government is getting very finicky about their schedule requirements. Can it be done? Can you prove that it can be done? Can you give me a schedule that proves that it can be done? So they're asking for those things more and more. They're getting too many cases where the contracts get awarded and then years go by before they actually get the product or the services or the construction, and they're starting to understand their own mistakes and making that more prudent, more requirements. So two other things that you really need is someone to be in charge, someone to coordinate the schedule and to pull everything together, and you definitely need somebody that can write. It doesn't have to be a poet, but it has to be somebody that understands how to write, and how to write in a manner that's businesslike. Too often it's too technical, or it's not technical enough, so you need somebody that can marry the two together. Okay, that's for the blue team. The red team, again, we've talked about how the PTAC can do that, but writing a government contract, again, is like writing a novel or newspaper article. You know, you can't read your own mistakes. You need somebody to edit it and make sure that it is proper and that it does what it's supposed to do. Here's some questions. You know, is it responsible? Does it tell a compelling story? Does it tie it all together? And an example that we do on Friday is very evident of how you can take two sections and they overlap, and how you can do yourself a disservice by not building on each other and tying it all together. Okay. So red team, independent review, we're not going to stress that enough, because again, we can see your own mistakes when you don't have it. Okay. Normally we would take a little break here and we'd say, you know, for your own company, you know, who are those people? How are you going to manage this? Put it together. We would assist you. But since we're all remote, we're going to just kind of table that. But think about it. And if you need help, come to a PTAC. Let's go over your list. Let's figure out how we can get you some support, or where you can build from each other. See where we might have training that will help that. But think about how you can accomplish that to be successful in how you write proposals and win contracts. Okay. I bring this up because it is critical, and Lisa's already talked about it. You have to put together a schedule. You have got to. Some of the biggest mistakes contractors make is that they don't do a schedule, and they don't understand what their deadlines are and how much has to happen. And again, you get to the point where it's last minute, you're throwing it together, the car breaks down, you can't get your bid in, you've wasted all that time, or you've finally just slapped the proposal together and say, if I get it, I get it. We can see that. The government reads it, they can see that. So if you come to the PTAC for help, one of the first things that we're going to encourage you to do is, where's your schedule? What does it look like? Have you thought about this? What is the PPI cutoff? And the PPIs are pre-proposal inquiries. They allow you to ask questions. So when do I have to have my questions in? And the government, you know, I'll be the first one to say my blood runs green. I'm old government. We make mistakes. You know, we've got designs, we got packages that are old, haven't been updated. We've got technical people writing things over on top of what contractual people are. We got, you know, there are mistakes, and you need to ask ahead of time. So again, schedule is probably the first thing that we're going to ask you to put together, or strongly encourage you to put together. How much time do I have? Sometimes it makes a difference as whether or not you bid or no bid. You know, as I just can't get it done. I just cannot get it done in the time frame that it is, and it's just too much of a risk. You know, here was a good example. The government, God love them, but you know, they love for you to work on the weekends and over the holidays just because they're off. But you know, where we on one solicitation gave the contractors 47 calendar days, well, that's 33 work days. It just so happened that it was 2 weeks prior to Christmas break and 2 weeks after New Year break. So guess who was working during Christmas and New Year's? It required the coordination of an A&E, a major subcontractor, and teaming partners. It was a design build contract. I don't even know how you can bid it until you find out how you're going to build it. You know, they had to gather historical information. The government requires you to attend a site visit and to go to the technical library and research that. They ask that you have familiarized yourself with the site and the work and that you're confident you can do it. To draft, review, finalize, review, have a red team, you make corrections, print it, because of course you got to make printing and you got to deliver it. And that was all in 33 work days, which was very, very unreasonable. This data is very old, but I just went into the FedBizOps, which is no longer FedBizOps, it's beta.sam, if I'm correct. And here were some packages I just pulled. You know, the Army Corps of Engineers was advertising a MATOC, which is the same as a MAC. It was 5 contracts, $9 million, based in 4 option years. They gave them 31 days to respond. NAVC had 44 days on supplies and materials, 50 days on supplies and materials. NAVFAC had 31 days on a response to a $99 million contract. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers had 10 days for a visitor service center. Now, you know, I'm going to tell you that if I see 10 days, I'm sure you do too, there's pretty much an incumbent that they already know or who they want to narrow it down to, because a lot of people can't respond in 10 days. But these timeframes are standard. You know, 30, 45 days to do all that work is not unexpected. I mean, the government is pretty serious about not giving you enough time. They'll give you 45 days to put together a $45 million design build contract proposal, and then they'll take 120 days to review it. Common, very common. So we just need to help you get better at building your schedules to make sure that you have done the best you can do. So your time is well invested. Okay, so schedule, we're not going to stress it enough. It's just, it might take a day to do, maybe 4 hours to do, but it is essential to help you. The next thing we're going to do, I call them whiteboard layouts. I don't know what else to call it. It's just a term I come up with, those big writing boards in your conference room. They can be computerized, but again, now you have to start doing an outline. You have to make sure, one of the most critical things, no matter how well your technical proposal is written, how good your price is, if you fail in meeting the outline requirements or the content, or you miss something, you'll be bounced. You know, there's not consideration given for, well, okay, they missed this. I completely understand it. Very objective. So the next thing we want you to do is do an outline. You know, what is required? What do you have to have binders? Do you have to have tabs? Do you have to have artwork? What do I need to do? I can tell you that when I used to review proposals, let's say there was 40 proposals we received on a contract in the day, and we asked for, they weren't electronic at the time. Let's say we asked for 6 copies for our teams. I would walk into the initial bid and there would be 40 contractors with 6 proposals. Let's do the math. And they're all in 1-inch binders, white, okay? Because they went down to Staples and got them at the last minute. It was hard to distinguish between the bids unless you looked at them very carefully. It was hard to distinguish the bidders, you know, keep the books together. So these are things to think about. Okay, we're going to talk about that towards the end. What is my presentation? But these things have to be thought about out in front. You know, do I need to order binders? Do I need artwork? You know, what do I need? How do I make the tabs? How is it going to be laid out? What is the tabs, the sections, the page numbers? What is the content? Am I going to have narrative, forms, org charts? So you need to put together an outline. What am I looking for? Like a checklist. And when we stress this, we like to stress it not only for you, but for the PTAC. When Lisa said that people come to and say, here's my proposal, can you read it? And you have not done an outline. You have not separated out and called out, this is what the contract calls for. It takes a lot of time for us to go back to your contract and figure it out. Where if you can put together the outline and say, this is what I'm required to submit, and here's my proposal, can you check it for me? You're going to get a much better response from your PTAC, a much more timely response from your PTAC. But if you make us, your reviewer, have to start over, odds are we're going to interpret it different. We're going to find mistakes or make up mistakes that, you know, sometimes we're just interpreting it differently. So an outline is key. If we could set you up for a schedule and an outline, you're going to be much more successful before you ever start writing. Okay. Again, you're identifying also, like on evaluation factors, which ones have more weight, which ones are disqualifiers. We're starting to see more and more requirements or factors that are pass or fail. And those are things that you want to make sure if, for example, your past experience is a pass or fail and you don't have it, or you have an unsat or something, you may have prepared this whole proposal for not. So again, an outline is helping you and helping your reviewer, very much so. Again, quick refresh, we're talking about sections A and B have to be filled out. This is where all the key information is, and in sections K, L, and M. The rest of it, again, we're encouraging you to read because that's what you're bidding on, but this is where the guts of what your technical proposal is going to be coming from. In a construction contract, it's section 600, 100, you can see they line up. Okay. Again, here's the document control plan. You call it the whiteboard, document control plan, outline, whatever you want to call it, but putting it together with a checklist for your red team review. Here's where the packages, this is what has to happen. This is where I have to send it to. This is, when will it be printed? All those types of things is just kind of a sample format of how quickly and easily this can be put together. Pre-proposal inquiries. I want to take a moment to talk about pre-proposal inquiries. They're called PPIs. They are questions to clarify, to notify, to discuss discrepancies, get information. And I can tell you, and we got a couple examples here, you can write very poor PPIs and not get the answer that you needed, okay? First of all of your contracts are going to require that you give all questions in writing. Contracting officers will not entertain a question, very rarely. Now, I'm not saying that if you're buying supplies and you have a contracting officer that you're dealing with one-on-one that they won't answer a question, but in a competitive environment, they will not answer a question to you and not answer it to everybody. So they say you must put all of your questions in writing, even if they're very simple, and they will be published to everybody that is potentially bidding on this. So there's usually a standard form of what you have to do, okay? So we're going to talk about this, some of the mistakes that people made. First of all, you need to limit it to one question per PPI. Don't ask a bunch of questions. Anytime you get to a point where you've put an or an and, or a number two, you've asked too many questions. The government is very particular. They are very suspicious. They are going to read this question and say, how can I answer this in the most contractual manner possible? They're not going to say, oh yeah, we made a mistake, here's what we want you to do. They're looking at it very strategically. So you need to limit it to one question per page. You don't want to say, here's a whole bunch, because the government will historically answer one and ignore the rest. You also want to word your question to get to a yes or no response, okay? And I guarantee you, I take this as a challenge. Any question you give me, I can get you to rewrite it in a way to get to a yes or no. And getting to a yes or no is not saying, here's how we understand this. We're interpreting the contract to say this, do you confirm? Because if you're saying to a contractor or to a government, I think this is what you mean, can you confirm that? And you get an answer, no, what are you going to do? Now you don't know. Now you don't know what they meant. So don't interpret, don't tell them that, get to a yes or no. Do you mean this? Shall we provide this? Get to a yes or no question and do not follow up with, can you confirm? Or is that your understanding? That is not a legitimate yes or no determination, okay? If at all, it should contain a question mark. You need to have a question. The government is very aware that you ask PPIs for two reasons. You ask a PPI because you don't understand, or there's a conflict, or you really need this information to complete your bid. Some PPIs are submitted by people who want to share information. Mostly those are incumbents. Mostly those are incumbents that say, this is a really difficult job. There's security requirements. You can't get to the base in a timely manner. You've got to jump through hoops. It takes a long time to get this done. And I don't want somebody coming in and underbidding me. I want them to understand all the nuances and restrictions and things that go on. And so when they're bidding it, they're saying, well, wait a minute, I don't think that information is shared with everybody and somebody's going to underbid me. So they'll ask a question to get that information out there. For example, you know, does it still take 45 minutes to get through the gate? Yes or no? You know, they may not get they may not care about the answer because they already know what the answer is, but they're making sure that everybody else bidding on it says, oh, wait a minute, it takes 45 minutes to get through the gate. I didn't plan for that. So again, there's two reasons why PPIs are submitted. The government's aware of that. They know that. And they do their best to answer them. That's why they're strategic, but try to get all your PPIs to a yes or no question. So I got some examples here. This one says on page 6 of the RFP, the section titled Phase 1 Proposal shall be organized and include the following. Item C, representation and certifications require VETS 100 confirmation and filing. They've stated what it is. In the case of a newly formed JV with no previous work history as a JV, will each firm in the JV be required to submit their individual VETS 100 confirmation? Here's the kicker. Or is the newly formed JV expected to file a single VETS 100 confirmation for the JV? That seems like a legitimate question, but I can guarantee you that or is, it could be one or the other. And the government, again, likes to say yes or no. Here's their answer. It is the officer's responsibility to determine the applicability of the solicitation. You didn't get an answer, okay? So we would have said you should have reworded this to say, does each firm have to submit one? You know, get to that yes or no. But because there's an or in there, the government took great pride in saying, it's your responsibility to figure it out. And they didn't get the answer. Could this have bounced them? It could have. So again, you want to ask the PPI, specifically, you want to be strategic and you want to make sure that it's real clear. Another example, please confirm, I love things that say please confirm, that the non-8A firm of a joint venture or teaming arrangement can be a member of more than one entity submitting on the small MAC, the same as, meaning can the same design firm be on more than one team? And we said, please confirm. That means we, the asker, interpret that we can do that. And we want you to confirm that, okay? Now, you got this lengthy answer that goes on about the solicitation is not prohibited, but you have to know this, you have to do this, you have to file this, and it never did confirm or deny it. It actually made it more confusing by the time you got down to reading this, okay? And so again, you should have asked the question, can an A&E firm be on more than one team? That would have been a yes or a no, okay? And again, if you've asked the question, obviously this question was not for information to hinder other people, but they're saying, I really want to know, can I bid, can I work with two contractors? Or the contractors are wanting to know, I want to work with this guy, but he's working with someone else, is that okay? You didn't get the answer here. So now you're still confused. And do you want to really go together, to go to all the effort of putting in a proposal when you don't know, okay? I won't bore you too longly, but you know, a couple of the great examples. I pulled these right off of the internet, off of the mod pages. Page 9, section 2, evaluation factors for award. Note 1 of the RFP states, if experience, past performance, or safety data is supplied for the firm whose cage code and DUNS number does not match, the offeror must provide a detailed explanation. Of course, there's some information in between. Factor 2, experience requires submission of 5 design projects for the design team being utilized. In most circumstances, the offeror will utilize a design firm with a cage code and DUNS number that will not match unless an in-house designer is utilized. In the situation where an offeror is utilizing the past performance of a design firm with separate cage code and DUNS number found from the offeror, would the offeror be required to provide the written explanation outlined in note 1 for the design firm? What does everybody think the answer is? Well, I can't hear anybody, so I guess the question is yes. It says right there, if you're submitting safety data that doesn't match the cage code of the guy submitting the bid, you have to provide a detailed written explanation. So they're asking, do I have to provide that? Well, the answer is yes. Additionally, if more than one firm is utilized, will separate 2-page explanation be allowed for each firm, or will the offer be restricted to a single 2-page explanation? Holy cripes. Explanations submitted in response to note 1 are limited to a total of 2 pages as stipulated in the RFP. I don't think you really got your answer. And again, this was too long-winded. So the whole point is, ask the question, get to a yes or no. Okay. I hope these help, because I can guarantee you, and Terry and Mary Jo can chime in, is that, it's almost kind of a game to read PPIs and make note of how silly these are and see if we can come up with an answer that probably confuses them even more. And that's a terrible position to be in. But if you don't ask the right questions, you're going to get bad answers. That's the whole point, is ask them in a manner that gets to yes or no and is very clear. Don't get long-winded and convoluted like this.
Mona, it really does help. It does make it very specific. Yes or no.
Yes or no.
A lot of people grapple with how to ask the question. So I'm glad you put it in those terms.
And we need to keep working with them. So many of them get invested personally and they want to explain and they want to, I have the same problem with my firm, is they want to explain, this is how we understand it. That's not what your question is. What is your question? Your question is, what do you mean? This is conflicting. So it's an art, but once you start getting it, I can pick through any of these and cut them down. But when you ask silly questions, you're going to get silly answers, and that's wasting your time and potentially hurting you. So that's why we stress it. That's why we go over it. PPIs are an art form that you need to master if you want to get the answers that you need to be, to be competitive and to make your proposal worthwhile. Okay. So again, you've asked the questions. Did anybody else have any questions about PPIs? I want to make sure that.
Well, let me add on PPIs, and you did it in your examples. It's very important for contractors to identify the page, paragraph number, so the contracting officer, when they receive the PPI, they can zero in right exactly where the contractor has the question. What page, what paragraph, and then state what that paragraph has. And we've seen so many PPIs over the years where does this say that in the solicitation so I can find it? I spend too much time trying to figure out where in the solicitation this contractor's got this question. So state it right in the PPI, right at the beginning.
And I can guarantee you that if they can't find it, they're going to answer follow the contract.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that they're going to say follow the contract. And anytime you get a response like that means, one, they either didn't understand it, they couldn't find it, it wasn't clear, or but follow the contract means I don't have an answer for you. So again, these questions are for your benefit, and you need to make sure that you get them answered. So, and we've seen thousands of bad PPIs. So that's why I do address it. It is something that really needs to be worked on. So very quickly, I want to remind you that when you get amendments, you'll see you have to acknowledge them. You have to just look to make sure that your bid time has been extended or is not extended. Normally, they will provide you with revised pages. If they do not provide you with revised pages, I would personally go in and create a revised page so that you clearly do not lose that content of what they're changing or what they've added. They will generally provide responses to the PPIs by amendment so that you have to acknowledge them. And you do have to account for every amendment. So again, not acknowledging amendment or going back into FedBizOps, now beta.sam, and making sure that you have the latest amendment, and failure to acknowledge it gets your whole proposal bounced. They're not even going to bother reading it because you didn't acknowledge the last amendment was put out. And it might have been a silly one, but that is, again, something that the government is very, very sticky about, okay? And of course, just make sure that if you do get an amendment, whoever's monitoring that, whoever's in charge of checking the post or the website to make sure that the changes that they get distributed, that everybody on the team has been reviewing them. Okay.
Mona, I've got a question on that. Yes. Acknowledging an amendment, do you mean that, because I always coach to make sure the amendments are read or downloaded, but where in there do you acknowledge to the government agency that you have read the amendment? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, you have to do one of two things. On page 2 of the 1442, right before your signature, there is a list of blocks that you actually fill in amendments and dates. And you
Okay.
write them in saying, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Got it.
and you sign. Okay. You
Okay.
acknowledge that.
Thank
Some
you.
contractors like to double check, and sometimes you've got to read the instructions real clear. Sometimes you sign the amendment and attach it with your proposal.
Okay.
I have seen it both ways. I think that myself personally, I think that if you acknowledge the numbers and fill them in before you sign it, that is acknowledgement. I don't think you need to sign each one.
Okay.
Double check, because I have seen recently where they say sign the amendment and include it, you know.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Let me add, this is Terry. I've also seen over the years where contractors will acknowledge amendments in their offer cover letter. Either way, any one of those three methods is fine as long as they acknowledge receipt of all the amendments. Otherwise, they're non-responsive.
I would, yes, but if I had to encourage one on the 1442, which becomes your contract award document, that's the number one place I would want them acknowledged. You know, it's part of the actual award document then. So, you know, either one of those, but I probably would triple check that it's there. Okay. Okay. Now, we're going to talk about this clause a little bit more. So I didn't give it to you in full text, but this is one of them that I would like to point out to you is that clause 52-215-1 is instructions to offers. It is 99.9% in every solicitation you will see. This is a lengthy clause, which they never, well, sometimes they provide it to you in full text. And very rarely do people read it. And very rarely do people understand that there's a conflict, a lot of conflicts between what is written and what they've asked for. I'm not even sure the government actually reads it. And we're going to talk about this in our case study. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going over it at this point. But I want to point out that if you have this clause in your solicitation and it's not printed out in full text, print it out in full text. Because this is a clause you have to, this is a provision you have to provide, you have to comply with. And again, a provision is the basis for award. So if you've missed something, or you see where it says even by amendments and solicitation, if this solicitation is amended, all terms and conditions. I mean, these are very specific instructions that are often overlooked. And we're going to talk about how that made a difference in a proposal that was submitted. But my advice to you, if you print out any of the clauses, start with this one, because this one's going to give you some very specific instructions that may or may not be included in your instructions to offer, which is written by the contracting officer. Okay. Now, we're going to get to a little bit of a fun part. And I hope, do I have everybody still with me? I hope everybody's still with me, because this is the first part where we're going to take an opportunity to say, okay, what would a technical proposal look like? Okay. So I want you to take a quick moment and just read. This is literally from a contract we pulled for a good classic example, because it was very poorly responded to, and it makes a great training experience. But I want to, so here you have two sections in section L. This would have been, actually it was in section 600 because it was a construction contract. But this is what the government said, I want you to provide these two things out of a lot of things, but these were the two things. And they asked for an organization and management narrative very clearly. Provide a brief but concise written summary of an organization and approach to management. The narrative shall address both the approach to managing the project included in the scope of work and the approach to managing multiple projects located in remote areas. I can tell you that this is for a MAC contract. It's going to be a single award, but it's going to be for multiple, I guess it's not a MAC then, it was an IDIQ, I think. They're going to do multiple projects in multiple locations. They don't know how many yet. It's for construction. It happens to be in or some hospitals, I believe, in China, or children's clinics in China. It is overseas, but that's not important at this point. So they're asking for how are you going to manage the project, the scope of work, and multiple projects located in remote areas. Describe the organizational resources of the company and how their resources will be utilized. Clearly describe all teaming or joint venture arrangements, including a clear description of each firm's roles and responsibilities on the project, i.e. design, construction. A copy of the teaming or joint venture agreements may be appended to the plan, not included in the page limitation. Discuss any contractual arrangements that have been established. Identify the design team and describe the role of the design team during construction. Identify your procedures for safety, quality control throughout the design and construction process, and discuss your ability to perform work in multiple project sites throughout the country. Okay, that is number one. You're going to provide a narrative, or number 4 or 5, I don't know what number this was, but 6.1.1.1 says provide this narrative. 6.1.12 is a separate requirement, an organizational chart. Include a simple organizational chart illustrating the lines of communication within the proposed organization and the key personnel proposed for the specific project included in the scope of work. The chart shall clearly depict the names and positions of key personnel, including a company, owners, design lead, design team, project manager, site engineer, quality control manager, safety manager, and any other key personnel the contractor proposes to complete the work. Now, I can't see you right now, but I would like you to take a moment, and this is for you. Let's work on the org chart. Now, I know that this is just a few minutes of time, but I would like you to take a moment and say, if I had to provide an organization chart, let's focus on 6.1.1.2. What would my org chart look like? And I would like you, if you have a piece of paper, just to kind of draft up what you think a simple organizational chart would look like. And again, I can't see you working, but I'm going to assume that you are all diligently have your heads down trying to scratch out an org chart. Oops.
Note that one key bit of information for making this organizational chart is what is the requirement in the paragraph above. So it's multiple projects going concurrently.
Terry, your voice is fading in and out.
I don't know why that's doing that. It must be bandwidth. I was saying that it's important for people making this org chart to do it in conjunction with the paragraph before this, which is doing multiple projects concurrently in another country. Did you hear me now?
Yep. Thank you.
So hopefully everybody is scratching out, because this is a great first step in saying the government asked for something. What would I give them? What would be my interpretation of how I would respond to this? Okay. But without further ado, how many, and again, I cannot see you, so feel free to raise your hand. I can't see you. Hold on a second. Let me get to, how many think that this would represent a simple organizational chart? So we got the company name on top. We've identified the project manager. We have design, we have safety, we have construction supervisor. We've got local construction company and local design company. Now, I'm going to tell you that in all fairness, as any kind of IDIQ contract where we don't know what we've gotten yet, we don't know how many task orders we're going to get. I can't tell you who my designer is going to be yet, because I don't know if you're asking for a civil or architectural or what. So in all fairness, you know, they can't really address everything. But Lisa raised, I did see Lisa. Lisa raised her hand and said, yep, that looks like a simple organizational chart to me. Terry's saying no, because I think he knows what my answer is going to be. He's already given me the thumbs down. Okay. And I can't see anybody else yet. So, oh, wait a minute. Here we go. Michael, what do you think, Michael? Yay or nay? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs down. Sam, I don't see you on here, so I'm going to assume that we've got this. Now, let's go back and remember, just like Terry was saying, is that when we talked earlier about how your sections build on each other, now we could go back and say, oh, I see the company owner, I see the design lead, I see the design team, site engineer, quality control, safety managers. In all fairness, probably check the boxes. But we look up above, we go, well, wait a minute, my narrative is talking about multiple jobs in multiple locations, in multiple areas, and how are they all going to interface? What are my teaming roles? What are my responsibilities? Now, this is a classic case where literally, and I kid you not, I changed the names to protect the innocent, which is why Dick Clark is now the project manager. Martha Stewart is the design manager. This is the org chart that they presented as simple, straightforward. Now, if you were the reviewer, wouldn't this kind of look like you just mirrored back to me exactly what I told you? I mean, literally you drew a box around the safety manager and the construction manager, and I'm not even sure I see QC on here, so I don't know. Oh, there they are, quality control. So literally you gave me back what I told you and you just put boxes around the positions. We call this mirroring. You mirrored back exactly what I told you I wanted, okay? So in all fairness, and this is where we kind of lead into big discussions, which we can't have because this is Zoom. This is a simple organizational chart, okay? Now, most people throw their hands up and go, oh my God, Mona, that is not simple any longer. But in fact, it is. I can get it into the same square that that other one was. But now what have I accomplished? I've accomplished a ton of things. First of all, anybody that knows anything about flowcharts, you have to have arrows. You have to tell them which way the communication is going up, which way the communication is going down. They talked about resources and multiple jobs. Now, in this case, this is a joint venture. I need to tell you where my parent companies are coming from. I need to tell you what resources I can pull upon, because we talked about this earlier. This is where I'm leading you to. You have to convince the government that you are lowering their risk. You're telling them, where on this chart, I stand all alone. Anderson Hill Construction, as far as we can tell, stands all alone. There is nobody behind them. There is nobody really in front of them. We don't have any clue as to really what this is. This chart says, look at the companies I got behind me. If I need to tap into resources, I got a ready mix company that's part of my the mothership, okay? I've got design firms. I've got, look over here, Pearson Enterprises, and again, names have been changed, has a government services division, okay? So I am building the government's confidence that I know what I'm doing. I have these resources available to me. I am lowering their risk. If we had to put risk as a measure, and I swear to you, Terry can confirm this, Mary Jo can confirm this, that in our write-ups, we have to say literally, how much risk is this company? If I make an award to this company, where is my risk? Government, is it high risk or is it low risk? And we literally have to say, you know, this company represents a low risk to the government that satisfactory performance can be achieved. We have to make that statement that we can do that. And so when we're asking the question, am I going to make that statement on this chart? I got no clue. I don't even have arrows. I don't even know who the quality control manager works for. I assume the project manager because he's got no other lines. But this way, at least I know who's reporting to who and what reach back capabilities I have, okay? Now, in all fairness, because you didn't tell me what the work was, you just told me multiple locations, I kind of lied to you because see all these projects that I list down here? I've got 3 task orders called out. Well, I don't know what work you've given me, so I've told you I can't select my designer and I can't select my construction. I mean, in all fairness, I didn't give them really any solid information, but I communicated that I understood there are at least multiple task orders, okay? So I've communicated to them something that the other one didn't. Is it still an IDIQ contract? But I've told you I recognize it. I can't tell you what the work is because you haven't told me. I don't know who my designer is going to be, so I can't tell you that. But I can tell you that when these are awarded, this is who they're going to report to and how I'm going to manage that job. Another key factor here is that if you understand your client, and this is one of the things that's very important, and they don't always share with you, or they do, but it's buried. In the fact that the government, NAVFAC and the U.S. Corps of Engineers specifically say the quality control manager cannot work for the superintendent or the project manager. The quality control manager must in fact report to the head of the agency, okay? They want that to be a separate distinctive feature that says the guy that's writing my paycheck, the superintendent, cannot tell me that quality control is good. I'm checking on him, not the other way around, okay? In this case, you needed to know that buried in your technical spec section, there was a requirement for that. And if you don't pull that out and say, here's who they're reporting to, you are telling the government, I don't really even understand your scope. I didn't read your contract. You know, I can't even tell you who the guy reports to because I got him buried someplace else. Now in this case, we've said, oh, there's a quality manager on each job, but he will report to the corporate guy, okay? So we've given them some depth. This is depth. This is what you want to say to lower their risk. And this is where we make the first interpretation of what is literal, okay, and what is thoughtful. And how do I make the distinction between that when I'm doing something like this? How much depth do I have to put in? How much can I add to it? How can I lower the government's risk? Now, in this case, we've added a few things. We've added that there's an estimator and a corporate safety guy, okay, and a corporate scheduler. We're giving them even more information that we have thought about this and we're capable of doing the job. We aren't just hiring somebody on the fly. These are people that have names, okay, and we've filled in names. These are people, even under the project manager in the joint venture, I have a representative from each firm that participates in this, okay? So again, these are the subtleties that we want to start taking into it, is that if you had read this literally, company owner, lead design, design team, site engineer, quality control, safety manager, did not build on the paragraph above, literally mirrored back to them saying, yep, I'm going to have these people. All you have done is mirrored back the people, put a name on it, drawn a box around it, okay? This, and actually we did not go back and check, Mary Jo, we keep saying we're going to, as to whether or not this company got the award. The company was the incumbent. Okay, this is where you've gotten lazy. This is where you say you're the incumbent. I think they were the incumbent, and you didn't even know that you need to call out multiple task orders. You just assumed that the government didn't know.
Hey, Mona, I checked and they did not get it.
They did not get it?
They did not get it.
Okay. And if they were the incumbent, they just got bounced. They might have lost. And this was probably a $99 million or $100 million, you know, task order to do work in overseas, and they got bounced. So this is the kind of things that we want to do. We can't, Friday, we're going to talk a little bit more about the narrative. And again, some of the things you can and cannot do. But I wanted to touch briefly on how simple it is to say, I think this meets the requirements. And what we're saying is it doesn't, this does, okay? You need to expand upon it. Questions, thoughts, comments? One of the things that, go ahead,
You
Terry.
were talking earlier about the different colored teams, red team, pink, green, blue, all of that. So the red team would need to catch this when you got your third party, your other party, coming in and looking at the solicitation and the technical and price proposal. Did the proposal answer what the government is asking for in the solicitation? And hopefully the red team would catch this, that the org chart is insufficient.
Or it meets the bare minimums. You know, yeah, we would have said, we also would have, hopefully somebody would have caught, and this is what we're talking about, is the government will tell you that the contract has to be read as a whole, meaning all the document applies. You have to read it as a whole. These are not individual sections. And we mean the same thing for technical proposals. I mean, up above, Terry pointed out, there are very specific things you have to talk about in the narrative. You know, multiple locations, multiple teams. Why would you not call that out in your org chart? Why would there be a conflict then between what you're writing up above? And that's going to be the first question that a reviewer is going to be, is why do I have this disconnect? You know, why are you telling me one thing here, but you're showing me another thing here? They need to be built upon, and we need to train ourselves to read it as a whole and build on it as a whole. Okay. So those are, go ahead.
Mona, as I look at all this and think about where I'm starting from as a small company, as a one-person company, a lot of what I'm thinking about is being a sub to a larger company who's going to be the primary proposer. Are
Yes.
we going to talk at all about what I should think about in that regard? Certainly, down the line, I'm going to look for ways to be the prime,
Yeah.
but not immediately. So are we going to address that at all?
We're going to talk about it Friday. We're going to talk a little bit more about narrative and telling the story, which I think will help. And it depends on a sub whether or not you're ever asked to do a technical proposal or to assist with the technical proposal. A lot of subs are pretty much just give me a price for your scope of work, you know. Now you're A&E, right? You do design?
I do environmental site assessments.
Okay. One of the things that I often tell people that do those services, including A&E and some environmental and those kind of things, is you can assist your construction contractor on design builds by giving depth of what your designs and what your assessments have been in terms of quality and quantity. I see all the times where a construction firm has got a design build contract, they reference their A&E. Even on the experience, they say, you know, the A&E designed this building, and they just assume that by saying they designed this BEQ, that the reader understands how many disciplines are involved, how many drawings were provided. You know, what is the depth to your services? You know, if you write an environmental assessment report, how many pages, how many areas did it cover? What kind of, you know, so you're looking for depth. You're looking for, you know, so often we want to say, oh, I wrote an assessment. And you assume everybody knows what an assessment should consist of. Well, you're talking to people who don't or may not. Contracting officer has no clue. So they're looking at it saying, well, I don't understand your depth. You know, when you write an assessment, what does that mean? Is it a 500-page report with no findings? Is it a, you know, a 10-page report with one drawing? You know, what is it that you can explain about what work you do and what's to be required that shows your depth? You know, how many have you done? You know, that type of thing. So we're going to talk on Friday about the narrative and how to do some of that. But that information is key to get to your prime so that they can expand upon these things. You know, just like even on this drawing, it says designer to be selected. Now, if I was really getting nitpicky, I would have noted that they didn't really give much attention to the designer. You know, there are multiple disciplines. You know, why didn't you call out the types of disciplines so that you could have communicated, yes, I have an architectural, yes, I have a civil, yes, I have an environmental. You know, I mean, there's no depth at all to the design section. And that's another area that we might have called out and said, yeah, in all fairness, you told me about your QC, you told me about your scheduling. I get that you understand construction. Do you understand design?
Right.
Do you understand what it takes? And how could we have shown more depth to that? And depth would have been adding under the designer, you know, possible layers, or at least a comment off that I have one designer that has all 8 disciplines in-house, or he has to sub that out. When the government's reviewing this, they're saying, well, if you have to sub it all out, that's a layer of where's my risk going? You have multiple people reviewing this. You have multiple teams putting things together. My risk is higher than if you had told me, look, I hired one firm that has all 8 disciplines in it. I'm already coordinating that for you. Again, how do I manage risk? How do I explain to them and show them the depth that helps lower their risk? And in this case, we totally blew it on the designer. You know, if anybody was looking at it from the government side, they'd say, how are you going to do the design? You just got designer to be selected. Is that in-house in China? Do do they have all the disciplines together? Is your lead guy a civil, but I want architectural? You know, those are things that we could have expanded upon. And that's where construction firms need the assistance of their engineering type disciplines to help them. You know, this is what you need to do to explain discipline, to expand upon that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good. Okay, good. So Friday, this is actually, I'm surprised we got through all the sections, both sections today, and we still have time to spare, which means Kathy can get busy for her. So we got through, kind of reading the contract, some heads up on, where this technical proposal is taking us. On Friday, we're going to talk about, tie in the red review and talk about narrative writing. We're going to talk about words not to use, how you can convey something, how it shows up, how we're reading it. So, we're going to really dive into it on Friday. So hopefully that'll be some good, hopefully everybody will be able to be back. But any other questions? I mean, actually, we're wrapping up a little early, but I think that's because I'm just doing all the talking. Anybody? Well,
I appreciate you. That's what I've got to say.
well,
Good
Kathy,
information. Great information.
oh, well, you're certainly welcome. It's much more helpful when it's in person. I get that we're kind of working with a handicap here, but I hope it was at least useful information. Kathy will make sure that the presentation goes out. I don't like to give it to you too far in advance because you would have read up on my chart and it would have been, a great showstopper. But she will make sure that this gets put out, and we hope to hear from you on Friday again. See everybody's smiling faces.
Oh, Mona, Sam says he wished he had learned about this 8 solicitations ago.
Well, tell him he'll be smarter in the future, Sam. So.
Sam, have you used PTAC to review any of your proposals?
No, we just jumped into it last month, and I know it is a service that's offered, and I've been wanting to, but it's what Mona said. The timelines are so short that it's really, really prohibitive. I didn't want to just throw something at them. Hey, you have 3 days to review this. So one of the key takeaways was the scheduling and just getting started on the technical writing really, really early versus, oh, let's go through all this 12-day process and now you only have 10 days left. So yeah, I plan on doing that, but I think I want to get my group a little bit stronger before I throw things at them last minute.
Okay, cool.
One of the things that we encourage you to start doing, especially if you've got 8 under your belt already, you know what your work is. Pretty much you'll start to see a rhythm of what's required. So you want to start putting together your past performance worksheets. You can send those to PTAC. If you're giving them examples or worksheets, you can send those in. We've got little trick ways of, matter of fact, one of the trick ways we like to do it is if you've got a worksheet that says present your experience, list the project and stuff, and then you go to a section that tells how they're going to grade it, we actually build that little grading sheet, that little checklist, and we put it right on the worksheet. Like, is it 5-year-old? Check. We put the date. Is it a $20 million project? Check. This was 35, So we actually help the government in their review. If we're going to have if they're going to have a checklist, I'm going to put the checklist in the narrative or on the chart, and I'm going to tell you how I met it. I'm going to tell you that I met it so that you don't misinterpret as you're reading it. I'm telling you this meets the requirement. I mean, let's help them. Let's help them help us. So there's some things that you can do ahead of time, like how to store the projects for previous examples or start writing narratives that are very similar. And we can help you with presentation, organization, charts, checklists. How do you help the government? How do we help convey that information? So, maybe you might even want to send one of your past ones and just, give it for comments. If time's not critical, we'd be more than happy to look at it and say, this is what I would have done in the past to maybe help you, and that'll be lessons learned for the future.
Yeah, I agree. 2 of them, one of them we placed 8th, so that wasn't too bad of a loss. And the very last one we got notified we were in 2nd place, and it was just basically what you described. We messed up the org chart. So that's why when I said, oh, if Terry says no, then it's no. But I actually agreed with Lisa at the beginning because that's what we ended up submitting. It was just a basic mirror chart, and now I know what not to do. So this has been very, very helpful for me, and I look forward to Friday.
Oh, good. Well, that's what we're here for. And you got, we happen to think, Lisa, sorry, you got the best PTAC here in the sense that you got 3 retired contracting officers. I mean, we are the people that have read thousands of these, so you're getting firsthand information as to what should be given. So we're
Sam, this is Terry. On those 8 proposals, did the agency send you an award notification saying so-and-so got the award for so much money?
Yes, they even gave us our scoring. I think the winning bidder had a score of 370 out of 500, and we scored 350. And yeah.
Okay, so in those letters, did they offer you a debrief?
Yes, they did. They said that I feel a little bit embarrassed because Mona just said it is the narrative needs to be stronger. You didn't write out the schedule, so we put a matrix schedule on it, but we didn't actually write out the schedule because we said, well, why would we write out individual dates on a schedule when we haven't even won it yet? So we put out like a sample schedule, but we didn't put actual dates on it. And the other thing is the org chart. They said that I didn't highlight the key personnel, which you've met at the Northwest Alliance. I should have spent a couple of pages on them instead of half a page, if you will, you know.
So where I was going with my comment is anytime that the federal agency offers a debrief, always ask for a debrief. Even if you are the successful offer and you are the awardee, ask for a debrief.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They'll always offer you good insight. Well, they'll offer their interpretation. You know, and I agree with Terry. Always take the debriefs, even if you're successful. You know, ask them for areas for improvement. You'll get the points. You know, it is subjective. It's objective, but it's subjective. You know, they're going to make sure that you understand you were not selected. So they're going to make sure that's real clear. But it's good information. And please send us, you know, like an old one, and we'll be more than happy to help you because, again, these are, very helpful hints that might help you in the future. So
I guess if I were to comment, one last thing is one of the things I noticed, because I'm in a joint venture with a large company, is I didn't realize they put so much time in the sources sought and like the pre-solicitations. They almost use that time to prepare the actual solicitation. That almost extends the timeline it takes to prepare. So that one was one little detail I was unaware of at the time when I started this.
yeah. And you're getting to the point, if you're bidding on that regularly, you need to fall into that category of printing your clause book because, eventually you're going to win right there and you're going to be in the thick of things, deep end of the pool, as we call it. So, but good. I'm glad it was helpful. And I look forward to you coming back on Friday because we're going to talk about some of the narrative. And I get really excited about this proposal because it's really a great example of what not to do. So,
I think if you don't mind, I'll send some of my final losing proposals, the second place one and the 8th place one, to PTAC, and of course you, Mona, just for review. Maybe use it as an example as what not to do for future classes.
Oh, well, unless it's blatant like these ones, and when we get to the narrative, you're going to see blatant. I mean, this is it's just almost laughable. But the org chart was, it was subjective. I wouldn't have graded. I would have done exactly what I told you. It was mirroring. So they could have done better. But in the narrative, there's blatant mistakes that just, we're going to talk about on Friday. It's hilarious. But I thank you all for attending. Kathy, you got any closing comments?
I don't. Just a reminder, if you haven't gone ahead and signed up for Friday on the PTAC website, you need to. And I think that's it. Thank you for joining us, and tell all your PTAC friends they missed out. That's what you should do.
And class on Friday starts at 8, vice 7:30, is that correct?
So it's 7:30 again. And it will be Teresa coordinating, not me. I am in an all-day board meeting that starts at 7. I'm really excited.
Well, I will see you all on Friday. So,
all right, Michael, did you have a comment?
No, I'm saying I'll see you Friday.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
bye.